I want to be clear that this show is not necessarily projection-based bets, math-based bets, model-based bets. The stuff that we'll talk about today could be projection-based, but also could just be personal plays, firing from the gut. Who knows? We're here to have fun. It is the Super Bowl, of course. Let's get into it here. I'll go first with my first prop of the day. One of the first ones that I've taken it is Dallas Goedert under 4.5 catches plus 110. I think this is a classic case of recent form versus longer view. The longer view is that when A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Saquon have all been healthy, Goedert's role and production has been fine, not spectacular, fine. Now, the recent form is in the playoffs. Goedert's been absolutely smashing. He has 18 targets in the 3 playoff games, massive 26% share, and markets are latching on to that, right? And so to get a tight end on a run-first team, he has to get 5 or more catches, and to get that at plus money, it's kind of a close my eyes and bet it. We are showing that as a little bit of value in projection. I'll get Leone's take there on that in a second. And another way to play this that I took is Marquise Brown to have more receiving yards than Dallas Goedert at plus 145. Marquise Brown is entrenched as the number 2 wide receiver for the Chiefs, and he's so much more likely to make a big play than Goedert in these head-to-heads. Typically I think we want to lean wide receiver over tight end. Random things happen. It's more likely that Hollywood is the one that busts a big play. So I know Evan's on the other side of this. We have some disagreement on how Goedert's going to do here. But again, for me, under 4.5 catches at plus 110, Goedert to have Marquise Brown to have more receiving yards than Goedert plus 145. Also, I'll throw it to Evan now, who is on the other side of the Goedert stuff. We should have just bet each other, Evan, and saved the juice. But go ahead, Evan, on the Goedert stuff.
Under 4.5, under 4.5 catches, that's not a terrible bet, even though I'm on the other side of this technically at plus money, because he can still get where I want to go with him, even if he catches 4 passes. I need him to catch 4 passes, but we can still all be right, which would be nice, obviously. Yeah, it's 4.5 receptions for his straight player prop, 52.5 receiving yards. I think that those are okay. What I'm really intrigued by, first player in the game to get to 20 receiving yards, 7-1, Dallas Goedert. First player in the game to get to 20 receiving yards. And then for him to beat Travis Kelce straight up. Travis Kelce is minus 9.5 yards to outgain Dallas Goedert. I think that Goedert can absolutely come within 9.5 yards, within 9 yards of Travis Kelce. And I think he can have more receiving yards than Travis Kelce, which is like plus 130, plus 140. I like those. And then I like his receiving ladders. He's playing so, and that means bet 40 plus yards, 50 plus yards, 70 plus yards, 60 plus yards, 80 plus yards. And then if he gets 81 yards, you win all of those bets. Dallas Goedert is playing so well right now that in their last game, not only did he have 7 catches for 85 yards, but they also gave him rushing attempts. He had 2 rushes for 13 yards. That wouldn't help us on these bets, but it speaks to the fact that he has been a key critical contributor who they have identified as healthy. You remember he missed a month late in the season, came back for that Tanner McKee game, balled out in the Tanner McKee game, and then he's been balling out in the playoffs. If you, just from an on-field standpoint, first of all, the Chiefs gave up the most receiving yards in the NFL to tight ends this regular season. They gave up over 1,000 yards to opposing tight ends. And if you look at the way that their defense is constructed, it is designed to be attacked in the middle of the field, especially with Jalen Watson back, their number 2 cornerback. And Trey McDuffie has been just balling out of control, has had an incredible season. They blitz a lot. They play a lot of man coverage. Dallas Goedert has big-time numbers straight up versus man coverage. So I like him to have a nice game. I'm not betting him MVP. I'll say who I'm playing MVP later on. I don't think he's really in the mix to win that. I think that usually goes to the quarterback.
Yeah.
In instances where it might be a pass catcher, but I like this from a lot of angles.
Yeah. So Leone, obviously the Goedert projection has been difficult. I know we showed a slight under here on Goedert's receptions. How do you guys How is it shaking out from a math-based perspective on Goddard?
Yeah, we definitely prefer the under side of things. It's challenging. There's subjectivity. We call it math, but there's a lot of subjectivity in terms of, the target share we're putting on a player. We have him with about a 22% target share. That's pretty high for Goddard historically. I think it might scale down more to like 21.5% when all is said and done. But that's just a really high number. And even with like a 76% catch rate, which is right, his catch rate's been 80% this year, but that's, there's not a lot of room for improvement upon that. We're still showing EV on the under at plus money on both the catches. And, Caesar even has an outlier receiving yards where you're getting plus money on under 52.5 receiving yards. And the price just matters so much, we found in pricing these, not to be, I'm definitely guilty of being a nerd here, but like you move 20 cents one way or another, it can make a really big difference. So to get plus money, what that changes to the amount of times you need to hit it. Yeah, I just think it's a close your eyes, solid bet. It hurts based on the recent game log, but
Yeah.
you've got such a run heavy team and, there's, tight end's a high injury risk position. I don't know. There's just a lot of things that I think, it's tough. And if you just look at his game log historically, he's definitely not, over
Right.
4.5 catches that frequently.
Right. And that's kind of the thing. It's like we go through this every year when we get into these samples where guys come into the Super Bowl hot, right? How much should we weight what he's done in the playoffs, which to Evan's point, he has been a focal point in the playoffs for the Eagles. How much should we weight that versus the long view? I think I'm more tempted to go with the long view here. So yeah. Okay. Leone, I gave my first. Evan gave his first. Go ahead with your first prop for the Super Bowl.
Okay, I will go with either quarterback in this game to throw for 350 yards. So either one you can get. The odds on this one on Caesars, I think it is, of course I'm losing the odds.
It was plus 650. I think it's like plus 600 now.
Okay, plus 650 is what I want to know. I think plus 600 is still okay. If you look at purely the game logs, now this one does not look good by short view, long view, however you want to break down the game logs. So definitely be aware of that. The reason I think, our modeling likes this one a bit more, few things happening in this game that aren't indicative of a normal game between these two teams. For starters, KC on the season, they're like 17-2, Phillies 17-3 over the course of the year. So these two teams combined have only lost 5 games. They haven't been in very many negative game scripts. And now against each other in a line that's close to 50-50, you should see the pass rates elevated. And one of these teams might be playing catch up from behind with a high pass rate in the second half that we haven't seen all year long or very much the last few years because they've been such winning teams. You also get them indoors in a dome game. And both these teams obviously play outdoors at home in cold weather stadiums. All through the playoffs, they've had home field advantage. So that's another thing that helps tilt both pass rates and pass efficiency their way. And these teams are relatively healthy. Obviously, Rashee Rice has been out for the season for KC, but you get Marquise Brown running nearly 70% routes both the playoff games. Kelsey Hopkins have been somewhat managed throughout the season. Xavier Worthy is seeing, at least a 23% target share in 5 straight games. So getting that rookie second half bump, they're in pretty good shape. Philly's got their main guys, all their main skill players playing in this game. Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Saquon Barkley. So it's a fun one to take. Definitely a long shot, though.
Yeah. I like that. I did take that. I also took, will any quarterback throw for 300 yards, not 350? Will any quarterback just throw for 300 yards? And you can get that at plus 205. I also took Mahomes 300 plus yards at plus 270. Just trying to lean into what Leone's talking about here, where the pass rates or the pass volume of some of these of both teams has been muted by them just rolling a lot of teams this year, or at least having leads against a lot of teams this year. The only other thing that I want to note there, Leone mentioned clean weather. Amico shared this one with me. Jake Elliott over 1.5 field goals at plus 110 in this game. In a potential high scoring game, Jake Elliott's been bad lately. People are like worried he's missing too many field goals, et cetera, et cetera. In ideal conditions, I'm not worried about that with Jake Elliott. So I thought over 1.5 plus 110 was an interesting one there. Okay. My second one, I'm going to go to the MVP award now. Last year, I had pretty strong feelings on MVP. I took Christian McCaffrey at plus 475. I also last year laid minus 250 on Brock Purdy not to be the MVP. I just thought that was backwards, that at worst CMC and Purdy had an equal shot to be MVP given their roles and perception from the voters and the public. This year, I kind of feel the opposite with the Eagles side. Jalen Hurts, the quarterback is plus 380 to be Super Bowl MVP, while Saquon is somewhere around plus 260. Now, note that over the last 15 years, quarterbacks have won this Super Bowl MVP 11 times, 73%. Eagles are only 1.5 point dog here. Obviously, a lot's going to come down to, well, obviously the Eagles have to win the game, but a lot's going to come down to touchdowns. And everyone assumes that Saquon's going to get the touchdowns, and Evan's going to talk about his MVP bet, and it's going to be about Saquon touchdowns for sure. Saquon was going to break some crazy long run. Saquon had 9 games this year where he didn't score a touchdown at all. And the other angle that I like with this is the SGP. I think Amico might have put this in the article on the site, but Jalen Hurts to have 2+ rushing TDs and then under 36.5 rushing yards is around 19 or 20 to 1. In other words, he doesn't run a ton. He doesn't run for a ton of yards, but he does get 2 tush pushes, which obviously blocks out Saquon from MVP and then allows him to get the SGP also. So I thought that was an interesting one that could be mispriced in the SGP market. So I've only taken one thing for MVP this week. It's been Jalen Hurts plus 380. Evan, I'll go to you now. I think you're on Saquon MVP, and correct me if I'm wrong, though.
Yeah, I may as well just skip right to my MVP stuff, and that's definitely Saquon Barkley. As you mentioned, it looks like a coin flip game with a 1.5 point spread. A lot of advanced metrics lately have been showing that the Chiefs' run defense, in particular, has been slipping, particularly down the stretch of the season. The Eagles have a dominant offensive line. Those 2 dudes in the middle, Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson, that were dealing with injuries, they've had 2 weeks to get themselves right. So Saquon Barkley, I can't believe we still don't know who the regular season MVP is, by the way. This is ridiculous. It's taking way too long. We have to wait till the Super Bowl to find out who the freaking regular season – the regular season ended a month ago, okay?
Yep. Please, Josh.
Yeah, please, Josh. Yeah, I need that too. But this can kind of be the way for the voters to say that they're sorry for not giving the regular season MVP to Saquon Barkley, who had probably the best running back season of my lifetime, I believe. I mean, Adrian Peterson had some crazy years. Saquon Barkley can catch. Definitely better in pass protection than Adrian Peterson. Saquon Barkley is a highlight reel player. So if he makes 3 or 4 plays in this game that are like just on a loop and they keep showing them, that could really work to his advantage. And then I just think if the Eagles win, and I mean, the odds say this, then I think it's probably going to be, number one, on Saquon Barkley's back, and that he is going to get rewarded for that. So plus 260. Yeah. I know it's not great odds. You know, you're not gonna pay off your mortgage with this, but it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I would just, though, my biggest counter is that this price on Hurts is so outlier for a quarterback. Quarterbacks are almost always plus 115, plus 130, at most plus 150. You're getting plus 380 on the quarterback of a team that's a 1.5 point dog. So that's my biggest counter and why I'm on Hurts for the most part there, or for all the part there for MVP. Obviously, like, it's going to come down to what happens at the 1 yard line. Do the Eagles get tackled on the 1 yard line? And like, this has been something we've been fighting all year, Leone. How can we model? How can we predict when the Eagles are going to land on the 1 yard line? It's really hard. If they land on the 1 yard line a lot and Saquon gets tackled at the 1, Hurts is going to score a ton of touchdowns. If Saquon gets at 1 yard more, Saquon's going to get a bunch of touchdowns and win MVP. So, you know, it's difficult, but I'll take the longer price there on Hurts at plus 380. Evan is on the Saquon at plus 260. Leone, go ahead with your second prop of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw on the MVP race. This is a much longer shot here. Obviously, there's more value on the Philly side just because the likelihood Mahomes wins it if KC wins is so high that it's hard to find a ton of value there. I'll go with Devontae Smith. He's 66 to 1 on BetMGM. On DraftKings, he's 65 to 1. I was a little surprised at some of the receiver prices for Philly. AJ Brown, I think, is in the 30s to 1. And then to get Devontae Smith, like double AJ Brown on a price I thought was like okay for AJ Brown, sticks out to me as a fun long shot here. I can't bet the MVP markets in New York, full disclosure, which is a real pain in the ass. But that's the one I'd be going with. He's a big player. And this is a team that funnels targets to basically 3 guys. It's Goedert, Devontae Smith, and AJ Brown. So that increases the odds that you could get some sort of like alpha receiver game, which is generally what you need to happen for a receiver to win MVP. Or you need, a lower scoring game where there's not a ton of touchdowns, but one receiver has like a clear majority of the yards. So someone on Philly could do that because of how condensed they are. So I do like Devontae Smith here. I just think these odds are way too long. It's still, he should probably be more like 45 to 1, 40 to 1.
It's hard for me on pass catcher MVP because it's obviously if Devontae has a huge game, Hurts is probably going to have a big game, right? Now there's paths that Leone was talking about there where it's a low scoring game. Maybe Hurts only throws 2 touchdowns, Saquon gets none, and Devontae Smith catches both, right? And like you could see how Devontae gets it there. To the point though, you're getting like that's baked into the market, right? Everything I just said is 100% baked in, and that's why you can get 65 to 1 here on Devontae Smith to be the MVP. All right. My third one, I'm going to go defense. I'm going to go Chiefs under 2.5 sacks. I took this at plus 132. You can still get around plus 120 there on Chiefs under 2.5 sacks. I think there's a lot of different ways to win this. First, Eagles get a lead. They go very run heavy. Not a ton of Hurts dropbacks. We saw that so many times this year, right? You also could get an outcome where the Eagles offensive line just dominates. I mean, I am expecting them to be very healthy and play very, very well in this game. The Eagles offensive line, I could see them just stonewalling. And I know Chiefs have a very good pass rush, whatever. And then the randomness of sacks versus throwaways versus scrambles, etc. You can just get lucky and get there. So to get plus money under 2.5 Chiefs sacks, I thought was pretty good. And so the Chiefs were 12th in the NFL in sacks per game this year, even though they've led, maybe not by a lot, but they've led for a lot of the games and forced teams to drop back plenty. So Chiefs under 2.5 sacks, took the plus 132 there. Still think plus 120 is out there. I'll go with that for my next one. Evan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, this is my last one real quick. It's just Jalen Hurts under 38.5 rushing yards. I know it's not fun. It's about, even money. But I think that it's a pretty good bet because I don't think that they're going to use him aggressively as a runner. I think that this knee injury is still a little bit of an issue. And I don't know, I thought about the 9.5 rushing attempts under that, but, he could get 4 tush pushes and 2 kneel downs at the end or something like that, and that would be no way to win. So I'm sticking with the yardage on Jalen Hurts under 38.5.
Yeah, we did take an official prop under 9.5 rush attempts on Jalen Hurts. And also, if you like that under 36.5, like I said, I mentioned the SGP earlier, the kind of anti-correlation one where Jalen Hurts runs for less than 37 yards, but scores 2 rushing touchdowns at 20 to 1 if you wanted to mix in a longer shot there with the stuff that Evan likes on the Hurts rushing unders, which I kind of like too, Leone. And I know we've liked that from projection standpoint. Also, the unders on the Hurts rushing stuff. Any more thoughts on that? And then you can go ahead with your next one.
Yeah, the Hurts scramble rate in the playoffs historically actually hasn't been that high. I know a lot of these quarterbacks, including Patrick Mahomes, we kind of have to give a bump to for the playoffs. So I know that's something that, we want to double, triple check stuff before we put it out, especially in the playoffs where, the regular season tendencies might not carry over. And that made us feel a bit better about putting out that official prop on the Hurts under rushing. I've got one fun one. And then I don't know if we're doing another round or not. I've got one.
Yes, we'll do another round. I got a couple more. Yeah.
Okay, so another fun one here. Any KC player to score 2+ touchdowns plus 210. I decided to just cover the board this year as opposed to trying to give you the Justin Watson long shot from previous years to watch him goose egg. But yeah, we've got this one model that is plus EV in our stuff. Sometimes we run a little bit hot on the touchdown, so bear that in mind. But essentially, I think, even though this is a very spread out team, you still got a chance that the game plan is going to focus on one player or another, and that person's got, and you've also just got a lot of potential touchdowns for Kansas City. Hunt kind of has the clear goal line role over Pacheco at this point. So you've got that going for you. Worthy can score in a variety of ways. So like this for Kansas City. Of course, Philly, the odds are much, much shorter because of Saquon and the tush push stuff. So not much value on the Philly side for this prop.
I was gonna say, I think that the guys you're looking at for maybe hitting that are Hunt, Worthy, maybe Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a couple more quick ones here just to get off my chest. First one, who will catch a pass first in the Super Bowl? Who will catch a pass first, Kareem Hunt or Saquon Barkley? It might surprise you to know that Kareem Hunt's targets per route run is 14.3% this season. Saquon Barkley's targets per route run this season is 14.4%. So roughly even in targets per route run. Obviously, I expect Barkley to play more and run more routes. But that said, Hunt is so cleanly ahead of Isaiah Pacheco at this point. I think Hunt's going to play pretty far ahead of Pacheco in this game. You can get Hunt plus 235 on FanDuel. Who will catch a pass first? Hunt or Barkley? Hunt plus 235, I think, is an interesting one there. And then one more here, Leone, and I hate to say bad stuff about Saquon, but the prices that we're getting on this Saquon, on fading Saquon stuff, and last year I did this with Kelce too. My biggest bet last year was Kelce not to score a touchdown. Minus 105, talks about it on this show. I mean, that was just an outrageous line because the public was just hammering Kelce so hard. I think Saquon is obviously a much, much, much better play than Kelce was last year, but the lines are so massive. First quarter only rushing, Saquon Barkley's rush yard line is 26.5. There is some data and some anecdotal evidence that the Eagles like to throw to set up the run. And so the total Saquon rush line for this game is 110.5. That assumes an even distribution. Now, first quarter, obviously, like there's no 2-minute drill, there's no 4-minute drill, etc. However, 26.5 is a huge line for one quarter. And I'm not sure it's going to be an even distribution here the whole way. And Eagles could come out throw heavy to set up the run also. So Saquon under 26.5 rush yards in the first quarter is one that I took. Also, Leone, anything else to get off your chest here for Super Bowl props?
Yeah, two more. One, I'll pile on the Saquon stuff. We put out an official on Saquon under longest rush, and it's still up there on some books at 25.5 with like pretty even juice on both sides. He's about 50-50 against this line on the season. I think he's 10-9 to the under at 25.5 and 9-10 to the under if you do 24.5, which is where it is at some other books, but close to 50-50. And as Evan said earlier in this show, Saquon just had a historic NFL season. He had one of the best seasons ever, and he still only hit this about 50-50. And this is with the team, again, going 17-3 over, or 17-2 in those games. And now they're in a spot where they're slight underdogs. They might not be able to run as frequently. We might see the pass rates elevated here. So, and it is a better defense they've faced, better than average for sure. So I'll take the Saquon under there. And then, I took that KC, any player to score 2+ touchdowns. I know they're spread out, but I think the market is like over baking in how spread out they are and some of the uncertainty. And you can actually take advantage in some spots on longer odds on players. And one market that, Sam Walzak, our data scientist, found for us that makes sense to take a crack at on FanDuel, they have to record a 20+ yard reception on DeAndre Hopkins at plus 370. And they've got to record a 30+ yard reception on Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy at plus 360 for Brown, plus 290 for Worthy. I think those are all good ways to take advantage of the uncertainty. And again, just expecting a bit more passing and pass efficiency in a dome game with a tight spread for KC.
Yeah, shout out to Sam and Amico and Jack and Court and everyone that's helped us. A lot of stuff that we talked about here today, they have uncovered also for sure. Oh, last thing I wanted to mention is the Hollywood Browns stuff. People, because his game log in the playoffs, Hollywood Browns, has been so bad, there are crazy long prices out there on Hollywood Brown. I did take 43-1 on Hollywood Brown to lead this game in rush plus receiving yards. Obviously, that's very unlikely, but we make it around 26-1. He only needs to hit that around 3% of the time for it to be good. I think that line's gone now, but my point is that there's some really long Hollywood stuff out there, and his role has been really good. Results have not been there for him, but I'm not so convinced that he's that far behind Xavier Worthy and the rest of these guys that are in play for the Chiefs at much shorter odds. So yeah, the long shot stuff for Hollywood, I am on here as well. Go ahead with your last one here, Evan.
All right, my bad. And this is my favorite one. So, and it's a bunch of them. It's the Mahomes rushing ladders. It's like what 20? I think it starts at like 25, where it's reasonable. You could take it up to 50 plus. If you think about this game, the Eagles defense is so freaking good, man. Like it might be the best defense in the NFL. I think from start to finish over the course of the season. I think it's going to be a struggle in many ways for the Chiefs to produce consistent offense. I think that they'll have a chance to maybe make some big plays, and they're good at executing on third and fourth down, especially considering that the refs are on their side. But I think overall it's going to be a struggle. And in those scenarios, and again, this is a close game. In those scenarios, Patrick Mahomes will put more on his shoulders. We saw him get a badass design run in the AFC Championship game. You can do for Mahomes to have 10 plus rushing yards in each quarter. And I know it's asking a lot. It's 25-1, 10 plus rushing yards in each quarter. I kind of don't love the longest run of over 13.5, but I think that he can have enough chunk runs. You also think about there's just the offense is slow. The offense is slow. This is why they needed back Hollywood, even though he hasn't really given them anything yet. The offense is slow outside of Xavier Worthy. Travis Kelce's 35 years old, on the brink of retirement. Kareem Hunt, probably one of the slowest running backs in the league. They're going to have to eke out yards. There was another one that I had here on Mahomes, and it was I mentioned the ladders. So I don't know. I think that this is a game that adds up well for Patrick Mahomes to have another big rushing day. And obviously we know that he tends to run the ball more in the playoffs.
Yeah, one that we took in the prop subscription related to this was Patrick Mahomes to have the longest rush in the Super Bowl at 11-1, 10-1. That line's gone now, but speaks to what Evan's talking about. I like that. I think, Leone, there's a discrepancy between base outcomes in Mahomes rushing and tail outcomes, where maybe the tail outcomes of Mahomes rushing is mispriced more than the base, at least according to our stuff. Any more thoughts on the Mahomes rushing in the Super Bowl, Leone?
Yeah, we did take an under 5.5 rush attempts for him at plus 120-ish. And on DraftKings, I think it was 6.5 at Big Juice, minus 150. But the discrepancy we're kind of seeing, if you look at the playoff game log, he's had so many games where he's gone over that 5-6 marker because of 2 to 3 kneel downs at the end. They have such a winning record over the past 4 years. But in this game, it's closer to 50-50. Even let's say it's 60-40, which the odds have it, closer than that. But even if you say it's 60-40, I think the market is just looking at his total rush attempts, not realizing how many of these are kneels, which is a reason why, we're on the under there from a volume standpoint, but we're not on the under from a yardage standpoint. A lot of what Silva's talking about is yardage stuff, especially if it's coming from scrambles. He has a pretty high yards per scramble historically. So that's sort of, the discrepancy we're seeing essentially is that the market is just assuming, 2 to 3 kneel downs, which he's gotten a lot of in the playoffs because they always win, but we think it should be closer to 1 to 1.5 kneel downs as the average expectation.
One more. Jalen Hurts is favored to have more rushing yards in the Super Bowl than Patrick Mahomes by 9.5 yards. And I think that Mahomes can get that outright. I think it's plus 130 right now on DraftKings. But that 9.5 yard cushion to go up against a guy who's, I think maybe not playing at 100% in Jalen Hurts, like that from Mahomes.
Yeah. While I'm thinking about it, make sure you're line shopping, because I was thinking about this Mahomes to have longest rush in the Super Bowl one. There were some 20-1 out there, 15-1 out there. If you shop some of these weird ones, and I think advice for people who are looking to really grind EV on this stuff, find props that aren't normally posted in the regular season or in the playoffs. And there's a lot of those out there for the Super Bowl, and then shop those across books, and you can find some wild discrepancies for lines. So please don't listen to Silva. Shop, find the best price on this stuff before you take it. Will make a huge difference. All right. This was fun. I'm going to go bet some more stuff. It's really, there's so many things to look through. It actually is fun to go through all week and just pile up some stuff, get a big portfolio of somewhat uncorrelated stuff, and hopefully come out on top. For Evan, for Leone, producer Luke, producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.